It gets solved because the second that you regress, that solution has now been rebutted. It's been broken.
Yeah,
And the idea
exactly.
is that as you're perpetually starting to get better and better and better, you have to build on that success and build up higher. But if something breaks underneath, if the foundations that you have are not strong enough, you're going to regress back to the beginning. You're going to go back and have a drink. You're going
For
to go
sure.
back and start screaming at your spouse. You're going to start lowering your goals. And I like what you said about the idea of destroying the idea of the victim mentality and about the idea of taking ownership. Money Mindset Mentoring Podcast. We are back. We are here with Derek Johnson of Fit with Derek. And Derek, it's an absolute pleasure to connect with you. Talking about the journey that you've had and all the different places that you lived and all the things that you've done. It's an absolute true pleasure to have you on the show. I think fitness is one of the most important things in life. I know as a person who went from 240 pounds down to 180 pounds, and how I feel completely different, how I perform completely different. My mindset's totally different. I feel like a whole different person. So, what you do, I think, is a testament to what people can do for their life. So really appreciate having you.
I appreciate you having me. It's a pleasure being here, Steve.
Man, so talk to me. Thank you, my man. Talk to me a little bit about what you do with your clients and why you started doing what you do with your clients.
For sure. So essentially what I do now is I help people break old patterns so they can thrive, not just survive. So the individual that crushes it in sales, but they can't keep a relationship to save their life, the individual that gains success, but can't stop drinking or doing drugs, or the individual that has a lot of skills and passions and talents, but they're too scared to hit post or to go to that speaking event. And they're good at what they do, but they just hit a ceiling. So we pinpoint why they hit the ceiling, and then we slowly get rid of that thing. And it's usually intrusive thought, negative emotion, like all the stuff that came from their past. So that's what we get rid of. And then the other aspect is just fitness, nutrition, and performance. But my favorite part is seeing the light bulb go off and their light back in their eye when they get their power back, when they're like, hey, it's been 2 weeks I haven't drank, or I don't have social anxiety now. I prepare for this. I don't need this when I go into this setting. So that's my favorite thing to see, is people that are just in control of more than just one area and not just pushing what they really want to work on into the closet. And they're like, yeah, I'll get around to it. So we pull it out, we face it, and we do the work. So then they feel like they can breathe again and actually take action on everything and not feel like all the stuff that's hidden under the table and in the closet is just going to drag them down. But what got me into it is my upbringing.
I love that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I love that. I just want to summarize a little bit of what you said there, because I think, without moving forward, the idea of what you said, you just dropped like so many nuggets of amazing, that just talking about some of those, I think, is really important. I think the idea that when you look at people and how they get so hindered by either something that happens in their past or some belief that they were given through some sort of generational transfer of disparity, yes. The idea that, hey, you can't think big, you can't do this, everybody's the same, you're not special, like all these things that we get told when we're younger, being able to break that and take true ownership of what their future looks like, whether it's in sales, whether it's in health, whatever. As you said, there's so many different things. And I think being able to pinpoint that thing that allows that mechanism for change so that they can feel confident to move forward with learning something new and doing something new, I think is so critically important. Because, we look at ourselves as children. We didn't have this problem. Like the idea that we learned how to go from just sitting there as a puddle of poop and pee and just crying to being able to then walk, to be able to talk, to be able to learn a language. We didn't have all these barriers as kids, but as we grow up as adults, we start learning these barriers that stop us from being able to grow at that such an accelerated rate. Because the best learners in life are 1-year-old babies. They pick up so much in such a short period of time. So exactly. I love what you said in that idea as a starting point. So, to move to the next step is what really got you passionate about this?
What got me into this is growing up, I always saw my parents waking up early and exercising. My dad was U.S. Army for 20, 25 years. My mother has been a kindergarten teacher for 40 plus years, but I'd wake up, She would be in the living room doing Insanity, P90X, Tybo, DVDs and cassette tapes, pool workouts. That was her thing. She didn't like the gym. My dad, he would go hit the gym, he'd go run, or he would go train with his soldiers. So that was second nature. So as the saying goes, kids do as they see, not as they're told. So I saw my parents training and did that. And on the flip side, they both grew up poor and became highly successful in their careers, but they had a lot of traumas that they never had time, honestly, to work on. So when I turned around
Mm,
12, when I turned 11, they started drinking a lot more. I noticed that there was a shift. Back then, I didn't know if something was happening in real time or something from their past was just creeping in. But what I noticed is after the get together, after the party, after the celebration, once the crowd left, once we got home or people left our house, that's when all hell broke loose, essentially. So from age 11 to 12, there's a lot of dark nights of screaming, broken glass, just all type of abuse and all that. But by the age of 12, 1 year of this happening, I told myself, I'm not the issue. Something is happening internally where I'm no longer scared. So I got to change something about me. And so I was like, I can't change them. But I realized that they were looking through me, not at me. So I don't know who they saw when they were blackout drunk, but they were yelling at somebody else through their son. But it like, at first it was a shock. But then after a while, I say, you know what? I need to harness this energy into something positive. So step one into my personal development journey was releasing those emotions via fitness. I was a kid and teen that would just push themselves until they were literally throwing up. Because once I pushed past that limit, my mind was open and then I would work on my faith. And I would just be that calm, quiet kid and nobody knew what was happening at home. I never wanted to complain. I never wanted to bash their reputation because they're well known in different countries and in their industries. And I was like, I'm not going to be that guy that's just going to add fire to fire. So I'm going to accept it. And then I got massively obsessed in middle school and high school, learning people's comeback story. He used to be a drug addict. Now he's a millionaire. She was this. Now she's on a world tour. He was this. Now he turned into this athlete and just all these different industries. And I told myself, it could be worse. I have both parents. We have a beautiful home in the panhandle of Florida. We have a screened in pool. We have air conditioning. I have food. We've traveled to various countries. I can handle these couple nights of the week where all hell breaks loose. So I would look at that perspective opposed to the victim mentality. And so fitness was my outlet and it helped my faith. And that opened up the doors to transform my body and my mindset. So I went from being this skinny kid. So I'm half German, half African American. We lived in Germany. I moved to America before Europeans moved to the States, they always watch American high school movies. And we wonder, is it really like that? So I'm a kid in Germany. Me and my cousins are watching it, and I'm like, jock, cheerleader, bully. And I was like, yeah, we'll see. I get to America, I'm getting my ass whooped in the locker room. I'm getting thrown on the ground. I'm like, yep, it's just like the movies. I'm getting beat up by the bully. And so I was like, enough is enough. At home was madness. In school, I was getting bullied. I was skinny, insecure, had a speech impediment, just didn't know myself. And I said, I'm tired of this. So I made a decision, change my body, change my mentality. And then I just started helping people because people were just asking me like, what happened to you? You like came out of a freaking hyperbolic chamber. Do you have a twin? Like you used to not say a word. You'd sit in the corner and be quiet and scared. And now you're just like raising your hand, public speaking. You're like, who is this guy? But I was so calm and confident from all this pain that I told myself, I've seen some of the worst stuff. So real life doesn't stress me anymore because of other dark stuff. But with that being said, I got inspired to help people. And it started when I was 15. I became a certified personal trainer and I would train my teachers, my parents' friends, my classmates, my neighbors. And after a while, I was training 50 people, 100 people, and just had all this experience. And then once I got into the college and into the army, I said, you know what? I noticed a common pattern. Some of my clients lose their results after we train together, whether it was in person or online. And I said, I let them down. That's my fault. So I took full ownership and said, I need to get into psychology and life coaching. So then I went all in that. And then from there, people stopped going backwards because I was able to teach them how to get rid of things. And so essentially, I healed my inner child, turned him into who I wanted to be, and gave him to others, and just kept compounding what I was learning to try to help even more people. So in hindsight, if that didn't happen, I don't know what I'd be doing. So I appreciate the darkness because it all gave me skills and gifts.
Absolutely. And you know, the funny thing is when you look at your message of you're over in Germany, you're looking at these sitcoms or whatever about American high school, and you're like, is it like that? And you're like, yeah, it is. The biggest difference of it actually being true is the problems are all the same, but the solutions, you know, on the TV shows, they happen in 30 minutes with commercials. Where in
Yeah.
real life, what happens is it takes a commitment to go through whatever that is that you need to go through. And it doesn't get solved in 30 minutes. In fact, it doesn't get solved probably in a month. It doesn't even get solved in a year. It gets solved because the second that you regress, that solution has now been rebutted. It's been broken.
Yeah,
And the idea
exactly.
is that as you're perpetually starting to get better and better and better, you have to build on that success and build up higher. But if something breaks underneath, if the foundations that you have are not strong enough, you're going to regress back to the beginning. You're going to go back and have a drink. You're going
For
to go
sure.
back and start screaming at your spouse. You're going to start lowering your goals. And I like what you said about the idea of destroying the idea of the victim mentality and about the idea of taking ownership. And the ownership, I think, is one of those most fundamental things that I think moving into society going from 2024 and beyond is that I think we're going to see a movement back to ownership. And I think we
Yes.
had a little ways in society where we moved away from the idea that we don't own our problems. Maybe the government can solve it. You know, maybe society needs to solve our problems. You know, all these external things that we're not connected to, that we're going to reach out and say they are responsible for solving it for us, which makes us a victim because when they
Oh
don't,
yeah.
now we're left hanging, you know, holding the bag. Whereas when we take extreme ownership, Jocko Willink talks about this, Grant Cardone talks about this, is the idea of ownership. That if you own all results, if everything happens because of you, if it doesn't happen to you, it happens because of you, then all of a sudden you're going to be able to own all the results. You're going to be able to predict the future
Oh
because you
yes.
can own the outcomes, right? And I
Exactly.
think that idea, I think, is extremely strong. And I think what you did in taking those tough situations that you went through as a kid and said, I'm not going to be a victim of this. I'm going to break that generational problem. I'm going to be the severance of that. And then in fact, I'm going to take it one step further is I'm going to then share my message with other people so that they can go through it. And everybody's experience is going to be completely different. But
Oh
the
yeah.
theme is exactly what you were doing is you were looking for somebody's hero story. And maybe you're that person, like the spider that bites Spider-Man that turns him into the hero. You're that
Yes.
spider that's going to bite him, but then you're going to be there to support him as he becomes the hero they need to be.
For sure. 100%, because I've always just seen the way that things connect. And because I was obsessed with comeback stories, I would legitimately say out loud all the time, this is part of my comeback story, no matter what happened. Family, personal, my own mistakes, my own stupidity as a teen, or whatever happened in life. I just always said, yes, this sucks, but it is what it is. This is part of my comeback story. So I need to learn, I need to continue and just keep going because what's the other option? Pick up a bottle, go backwards, live with regret. It's like, let's go ahead and put our head down and drive through this thing.
Absolutely. And you know, the thing is the when you decide to go backwards and live in the past, you know, the outcomes that come out of that are not very good because I think most depression, and again, I'm not a psychologist. Anybody who wants professional help, they seek a professional. But you know, my belief is this: is that most depression, most anxiety, come from living tense. And when I say living tense, I think they're living in the wrong tense. They're living in the past tense.
Yes,
Whereas when you look at somebody who's living in the present or living in the future tense, they're not connected to those things that are giving them the anxiety because they're looking forward, not backwards.
for sure. Exactly. And like, I just want to bounce off of that. When they're living in the past, you mentioned tense. It just made me think of people's body language. You can just sense it. You can go to Publix, Target, anywhere in public, and you can just see majority of people are just so tense. Their shoulders, their back, they're holding all this annoyance, trauma, anger, resentment. And you ask them one question like, hey, what made you choose that pasta over that? And they're so built, they're like, huh? Like, your pasta. Why do you choose that one over the other one? I saw you debating. They're like, oh. And they slowly like start to open up and you're like, shit. But it's funny and it's sad all in one because you realize how people are in such a hole or in such a rut, carrying this baggage with them from the past, from whatever happened yesterday, and they don't have the knowledge or the tools to like just free themselves of that. So just seeing how it's holding so many people back physically, mentally, with their health, with their
Yeah.
career, but being able to give people that vision and the tools they need so they can bust through that. And my favorite thing I just like to say is that they could get a full deep breath and they realize when was the last time they actually had that type of level of full deep breath, because usually it's shortness of breath from stress, anxiety, depression, and they're always so tense. So when they start letting go of some of these things, they can just breathe better.
I
Their
think
heart.
that's actually yeah. So I would challenge our audience right now to just try that. Like as you're listening to this podcast right now, just take a pause and take in a deep breath. And then just a deep breath is so important to take. When you can take a deep breath and just take that moment, I think what it does is it allows you to take that moment to think. It allows you, I think, to reconcile with your body. And I think it really allows you to get into a position that you can move forward. What do you think?
100%, because when they have the clarity that they have not had a real deep breath in a while, they realize how tense they were. So in psychology and with trauma healing and all that, there's a phrase called trauma is stored in the body. So I use myself as an example. For years, it felt like I had a fist in my chest. Didn't matter how far I ran, how healthy I ate, how hard I trained. I just always felt like I didn't get the full breath. And I knew it was not health related. I knew it was spiritual. I knew it was trauma. And I said, there's something that has to be released from here. I'm not going to the doctor to get prescribed something to get chest from, like, I'm not coughing or all this stuff. I could just sense it. You could just feel that my conscience is like, you have some pent up anger and something from your childhood is just there. And the older I got, I realized it was just like a twisting fist. And once I was able to work on that and release, I had one of the deepest breaths I ever had. And since then, I don't have that fist. Yes, I get emotional. Yes, life happens or whatever, but the chest is totally fine. So that's my example. So I always challenge people to assess their body and ask themselves, where do I think I store my trauma in? Is it my neck? Is it my back? Does my right leg keep twitching randomly when I'm really stressed and I have chronic shaking leg
Mm,
syndrome? There's subtle body movements and body language that happens when our stress and anxiety is high. But it's always interested me. Once I went deep on that, I was mind blown. And then I would like walk clients through different modalities and they're like, holy that's why my shoulder is this and this. And it had
yeah.
nothing to do with the injury, nothing to do with their workout. They were just like, man, it only happens like once a month. And I'm like, what time of the month? They're like, during this time. And that's usually when the pressure is on us to meet quotas. I'm like, and then we hit the nail on the head and it gives us clarity. But it's amazing just seeing somebody have clarity, also ourselves.
Well, I think the idea of the deep breath thing, just to summarize on that one, is when I took that deep breath as we were doing this session, I started coughing, and we probably cut it out, hopefully, anyways. And what it realized about my body is my body was dehydrated.
Oh, yeah.
I've been on podcast since 6:30 this morning. It's recorded sometime in the afternoon or whatever, and I didn't load up my water, and so it allowed my body to recognize, hey, you need to load up in a little bit more water.
Yeah.
And so not only can it expose something that you have inside metaphysically, it actually will expose something physically you have too, which I think is great. I think it's really, really good.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's nice. So let's look at when we think about the direction of how somebody can reach out to you. What's the next steps? Like, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
The best way would be via Instagram. That's personally my favorite app. And that is Fit with Derek 2, the number 2. And so my whole intent is just to plant seeds, make people think, make them think outside the box. If they hit snooze 5 times, they see a video and they're like, oh, he's talking to me in that video. But the intent is just to call them up, not necessarily just call them out. Because then they're like, you know what? I needed to hear that. Or I have been slacking. Today we're recording this on the 18th of January. The first 18 days, some people are in the zone and building momentum, but the majority, they're just like, I'll do it next Monday. They're the same person they were in December, talking about new year, new me. So just being more intentional about
Yep.
what we're doing. So that's social
Yep.
media. And then my website is fitwithderek.com. On there, they will see various clients, males and females. Some are just fitness, and some you'll see a ton of videos is them expressing their journey of personal development, overcoming traumas, social anxiety, depression, alcoholism, all these specific things that they overcame, and then life started to take off for them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. And the thing is the idea of fit, it doesn't necessarily mean just physically fit. It means mentally fit, financially fit. You know, there's so many different elements that I think you tap on into. And I think just starting that conversation, I think is extremely important, and then seeing where that takes them. So
Oh
Derek, it's
yeah.
been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And I think you bring such an amazing message of a journey that you've gone through, and the ability to be able to help somebody move from a position of victimization to a position of extreme ownership, and through the methods that you created. So truly appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, Steve. It was a pleasure being here.
Awesome. And guys, this is the Money Mindset Mentoring Podcast. We are so excited for you guys to join us today, and look forward to seeing you on the next one.